Hi folks, Canadian Prepper here. If you didn't see the video I released earlier today about the war economy thesis as it pertains to the Russia versus NATO conflict, I would encourage you to check it out after you check out this video, because guys, there is a crap storm a-brewing. And if you don't know how to build a super shelter, metaphorically speaking, if you don't have a survival poncho, metaphorically speaking, guess what? These elites, these corporations, these governments, they are going to leave you out there hypothermic in the cold. And you can't rely on the weathermen to give you an accurate forecast. And by the weathermen, in this case, I mean the media. The media are going to lie through their teeth. They are beholden to the aforementioned institutions. So do not rely on them. For example, in Europe, they are projecting a 1 to 2% recession, economic contraction as a result of a shortfall of Russian natural gas. Well, from my best estimates, it appears that the shortfall of natural gas is going to be something to the tune of like 50%. They're saying 10%. I don't understand how, when your entire continent is dependent on Russian natural gas, in some cases 90% of some of these countries, on average I think it's around 50%. So I don't understand how, in what universe, that only translates into a 1 to 2% economic contraction when you're going to have industries folding left and right. I think Europe is going to be the sacrificial lamb this winter. They are the tip of the spear when it comes to this war between the United States and the Russo-Sino bloc, if you want to call it that. Now, where are we going to start today? There is so much chaos coming around the bend that I just simply do not know where to start. So just put this on, go and do something around the house and listen to me rant and rave about the collapse of Western civilization, okay? Now, I want to share an observation. I want to share a point of clarity with you guys that I came to this conclusion today, because I see the price of gold sinking a little bit, and I see the price of the valuation of the US dollar increasing. Price of gold gets lower, US dollar gets higher. Anything that's measured in US dollars is going to correspondingly go down if the US dollar is getting stronger. Why is the US dollar getting stronger? Because we're approaching World War III. Whenever there's a time of global chaos, just like at the height of the pandemic, where the US dollar was stronger than ever, we see correspondingly the price of gold and other various commodities take a nosedive. We've seen it with oil during the pandemic. Now, granted, there are some other supply-demand forces at work that can cause a fluctuation and, market cornering and market manipulation with respect to these prices. But by and large, that's what it's all about. So fret not about the price of gold, because it's merely a reflection of the value of the US dollar. In fact, don't even think about the price of gold if you are going to be buying precious metals. It is completely irrelevant. And I mean completely irrelevant. And I probably would even disagree with people like Peter Schiff on this particular issue. If the price of gold skyrocketed to $10,000, chances are that means that those dollars are worth that much less, proportionally speaking. So the price of gold is really irrelevant. Whether it's $1,600 or $3,000, it's worth the same as it was during the Roman era. You could buy, relatively speaking, the same thing of technological sophistication that you could buy in the Roman era than you could buy today. So take that one to the bank, put it on a t-shirt, do whatever you want. The price of gold simply does not matter. You don't invest in precious metals to get a return. There is no returns in precious metals. It's merely as a store of value. That's all it is, a store of value. So we have to view it in those terms, which means that you shouldn't be, if you're a true gold purist or a precious metals purist, you shouldn't be looking at the price. And you should also always consider, well, what are we pricing it in, right? Where to go from here? Where do we go from here? We've got a lot of stuff going on the China-Taiwan front today. We got a lot of things happening on the Ukraine-Russia war front. We got shortages in various medications around the world. We got major video games being leaked, which was probably pre-scripted, I imagine. We have, and you might not think that that's important, and it really isn't, but it's interesting nonetheless. We have these crazy storms on every continent, it appears. Now we're entering the storm era. We have shortages, food shortages, among other things. So let's just dive right into this. Now, where should we begin today? Let's start off with the China-Taiwan situation, because this, I think, is very important. Everybody knows that the big conflict is with China and the United States. Right now, Joe Biden has essentially said in an interview he did, I believe it was with 60 Minutes, ABC, one of these, mainstream media conglomerates. He said that he would be willing, and I'm paraphrasing here, to send men and women to fight and die on behalf of Taiwan's independence. Now, he was very clever in how he worded this, okay? When asked if they would send men and women, this is verbatim, this isn't me just, exaggerating what he said. He basically said that we will support Taiwan if the Chinese invade, meaning that we will support them militarily. Now, he also said that we don't encourage Taiwan's independence, so this is not in violation of the One China policy, but he did say if Taiwan chooses, there I go again with them Freudian slips, if Taiwan chooses to be independent, we will support them. Does that make sense? So, if Taiwan chooses, we'll support them, but we're not going to encourage them at all. Well, it doesn't matter. I mean, you can encourage people not to do drugs, but if they choose to do drugs, we're going to support them in doing drugs. That doesn't make any sense. And I'm not saying Taiwan wanting their independence is the same as wanting to become a drug addict. No, but it's probably not a great metaphor. You guys get what I mean. We're going to war with China. China knows it, which is why, based on my war economy thesis with Russia, I think China wants Russia to do a full-scale general military mobilization to really put the pressure on NATO on their western front, of course, would be the Ukrainian front, because they know that that's going to tie up a lot of resources that the U.S. will not be able to bring to bear in the South China Sea, because there are weapon shortages on all sides. Even Russia is experiencing weapon shortages, which is why they will be compelled at some point to go into war mode. Not only for the case of winning the war and national security purposes from their perspective, but also to bolster their own economy. Yes, war is a great economic stimulus. Unfortunately, a lot of people don't want to hear this. It's a great economic stimulus in the same way that, getting people to buy a new iPhone every 2 years that they don't need is an economic stimulus. Replace iPhone with tank, same useless crap that's not doing humanity a whole lot of good. And you're going to get an economic boon as a result of it. So they're hoping that the Ukrainians bleed the U.S. dry in terms of its armaments. Now, one interesting thing to think about here, Ukraine has to win this war in order to pay back all the money that it's borrowing from the United States. Unless they're just going to scrap the debt and put that on the U.S. taxpayer, which may well happen. But you got to think about that, is that there's kind of a bit of it's almost like a war bond in a way. Like you're betting that Ukraine's going to win. So you're lending them this money to buy these weapons, or you're lending them the weapons themselves with the hopes that they're going to win to be able to pay back. Well, even if they do win, how long would it take for them to rebuild their economy to be able to pay back these kind of debts that they've been racking up with the United States and the Lend-Lease program? So it's not looking good. Now, Taiwan is going to be in a similar predicament, whereas there's going to be a vested interest in them winning that war as well. And this is where it gets scary, because, money's involved and people don't want to lose money. Nobody wants to lose money. So that increases the risks of escalation. Now, with the Taiwan situation, wasn't sure if was it Mark Milley? Actually, no, it was Admiral Carl Thomas who has warned of a naval blockade. Well, we were warning about that long ago. That's how it's going to start. It's going to start with a naval blockade, because right now Congress has recently passed or approved a bill to send $4.5 billion worth of weapons to Taiwan, The Chinese, of course, don't want this. They don't want any weapons flowing into Taiwan because eventually the goal of the Chinese is to annex Taiwan. So the more weapons the United States sends there, the more information they share, the more training they do with Taiwanese troops, the harder it's going to be for the Chinese. 4.5 billion is not a deal breaker when it comes to China invading Taiwan. That just means they need to invest another 10 billion into their war effort, which they will if they need to. But it does mean that it's going to slow them down. It's going to create more problems. So you could foresee a situation if Biden approves this bill that was put through Congress for 4.5 billion in weapons, where the Chinese try to block access to Taiwan from the U.S. military, and that's how things pop off, or we kind of hit some sort of naval stalemate, and that forces some sort of negotiation, which likely won't go over well because the Chinese aren't going to waver. The U.S. is not going to waver on its support because it needs the semiconductors, and this is part of the reason why the U.S. military that it's planning on sending to Taiwan to defend Taiwan's independence is dependent on the semiconductors that Taiwan makes in order to, and not only that, but their quantum computing, their artificial intelligence systems, their information gathering system, it all relies on the chips. It's all about the chips. That's new gold. And it's the gold that depreciates, though. That's the problem, is that chips, semiconductors depreciate, because of Moore's law, right? Every 2 years, it's basically obsolete. So it's gold, but it's depreciating gold. But it's the gold that we need in order to control the future. So it's likely that there's going to be some sort of naval blockade. Eventually, that war is going to break out. And I think China doesn't mind if Russia is doing what it can on the Western Front to tie up NATO's attention and resources over there. Now you have a top general, Mark Milley, who's the chairman of the Joint Chief of Staff, who's worried about what Russia will do next with respect to the use of tactical nuclear weapons, blah, blah, blah. There is talk that Russia has moved some S-300 systems from Saint Petersburg. Saint Petersburg is defended by a variety of different anti-missile air defense systems like the S-300, the S-400. They've moved a number of their S-300 systems, and this is according to NATO satellite, I think Finnish intelligence. And they're saying that, yeah, they've moved these to Ukraine because for whatever reason they're running low. Now, as far as I know, they have thousands of these S-500 missile systems. I think they've only fired off 500 missiles. They have like 7,000 of the missiles left. So I think this, again, is just a nothing burger. I think this is Russia moving around stuff, cycling out old stock, so to speak. And because they know that the war economy can... Look what happened in World War II in Germany. Within 4 years, they went from having virtually no military at all to being the most powerful military in the world. And that was simply by virtue of, well, obviously, fascism in its purest, truest sense, in terms of the integration of the government and corporations, but also the wild-eyed patriotism, right? And the populism. And of course, the scapegoating of other people. So if you continue to push and prod the Russian people, they might start to have that same sort of victim mentality and scapegoat the rest of the world and give them all the more excuse to go on a warpath and just fully mobilize, put everything they have, instead of putting it into Gucci bags and iPhones, just start building tanks, missiles, and airplanes. Get the semiconductors they need from China, get the cheap labor that they need from North Korea, get the drones and the other supplementary tech from Iran and other places. And, they're good to go. And there's always this relationship between them and Turkey and Hungary. And, so, shit's going to hit the fan this winter. The Europeans are going to be left out in the cold. They're the ones that suffer the most. This is all just a continuation of World War II. That's all this is. Because you think about it, right? World War II, the United States and the Soviets meet in Berlin, right? Where the Soviets liberate the camps. The US comes in on the other side. Since that time, both of those places have virtually been under occupation of one of those. Either it's the US who's been occupying them or the Russians. Up until the collapse of the Berlin Wall, it was the Soviets who controlled a lot of those Slavic countries, like the Eastern European countries. And then, of course, they switched to NATO, which they're really just under US hegemony at that point. And in Germany, in fact, there's still military there occupying the country. So they're still virtually under US military occupation. So they are going to be the sacrificial lambs. This is why Survival Lily issued that warning video the other day, where she talked about how they're stocking up on firewood. The price of firewood is going through the roof. And this is why I think they don't, going back to my original point I made in this video, I don't think they want to incite a panic with respect to the coming energy crisis in Europe because of the shortfalls of natural gas and other forms of energy. The fact of the matter is the price of this stuff is going to continue to skyrocket, and it's going to price a lot of things out of the market, a lot of industry out of the market. And if they were to tell people how bad it's really going to get, you're going to have the whatever remains of European forests deforested. People are going to be out there, you know, they're going to have to impose all kinds of restrictions. And the Europeans are really between a rock and a hard place here, because I'm sure there's a lot of them who are like, man, you know, we got this Nord Stream pipeline already in the ground. The answer to most of our energy problems is simply turning it on. Now, I understand the long game. You don't want to be dependent on Russian energy. But this is what people are going to start saying when they're freezing in their homes. And they're going to start saying to themselves, man, we have the means to get energy, but we're not because of our government. And of course, the government, you know, is looking over their shoulder and they see the U.S. military pointing a gun, looking down the barrel of the U.S. military rifle and saying, no, you just stay the course. And these leaders are, you know, they're gonna be overthrown. And you're gonna see this perpetual cycling out of leaders who are just going to be the fall guys when the reality is they're under U.S. hegemony. Everybody says it differently. Tomato, whatever. You know what I mean? So that's my whole analysis of that situation. It's going to get ugly. And you could have a situation whereby people channel their anger towards the Russians, and you start to really see that anti-Russian sentiment build up to the point of hysteria where people are demanding direct engagement with NATO. But I think they have a long way to go. I think you would almost need some event. You would need a Russian attack on some European city or something outside, some terrorist incident, which we haven't really seen. We've seen the converse where, I mean, you can call it terrorist or not. I mean, really, Ukraine and Russia are at war. So it's open season. Ukraine has every right to attack Russia on their territory, right? Because they're at war. I mean, this idea that they're going to withhold attacks against Russia is strange into itself. I mean, obviously, the logic is that this would compel the Russians to take an even more aggressive approach. So the implication, I just thought about this. The simple fact that Ukraine is not targeting within Russia tells you that they are worried about what the Russians will do, right? It tells you they know the Russians are holding back. You get what I'm saying? Put that one on a t-shirt too. Yeah, you know, that's, wow. They know, and that's proof right there. I mean, we know this, but it's kind of an unspoken thing. It's the elephant in the room. They know that the Russians, maybe they'll say, well, we're worried that they're going to nuke us or something like that. But really, it's all about, they know that the Russians will target decision-making centers, cut the head off the snake, attack civilian infrastructure, and go scorched earth on Ukraine, which is what they don't want them to do. Yet in the media, they're saying, oh, Russia can't do this, they can't do that. No. If that was true, then Ukraine wouldn't be worried about attacking Russians, right? So you got to put these things together, guys. Anyways, The Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban has suggested that the war will likely continue at least till 2030. I guess that's when the world's just going to end, in 2030 or something like that. 40% of the European industry is going to be shut down this winter due to natural gas shortages, yet there's only going to be a 1 to 2% recession. Come on, guys. They don't want you storming the stores and the coal mines and the propane tanks, whatever, in the Canadian Tire section. I'm sorry, I'm from Canada. I don't know what you guys have there in Europe. But they don't want you to be buying up all the electric heaters and collapsing the grid in that way. It's gonna get ugly. It's gonna be an interesting year. I'm interested to see how Europeans are gonna take it, because it really all comes down to that. It really all comes down to whether they're gonna continue with this unwavering support. But I think something's gonna break. Like, we know that during the fall, the Russians are going to be stunted in their offensive, and both sides will, in fact. But the Russians are arguably far more prepared for a winter war than the Ukrainians are, and they do have many advantages. But for a period there is going to be a bit of a slowdown in the military activity because of the muddy season, but then the ground's going to freeze, and then it's going to be open season again, right? So it's going to be interesting. And then now you have this situation opening up on the China-Taiwan front, where Biden has explicitly stated, Biden said yes when a 60 Minutes interviewer asked him if U.S. forces, U.S. men and women would defend Taiwan in the event of a Chinese invasion. That's called going to war with China. We're entering a war cycle, and I think the Fed could perhaps be thinking to itself, well, maybe not the Fed, but I'm guessing that the U.S., as they have the means to get on a war footing and actually do a real war economy, just like the Russians and the Chinese, they're probably thinking to themselves, a way out of this recession would be a war. If you had another World War II, Pearl Harbor type incident that would just mobilize the entire population for war, take attention away from everything else that was going on. And then, because it's all Keynesian economics, right? It's all just, stimulus. That's what we're running on. So why not just war stimulus? It's just changing it up. Anyways, as expected, China is not happy about Biden's commitment now to Taiwan. It's become abundantly clear what is going on, although I'm sure they knew that already, which is why they've been having these massive military parades for as long as we can remember, because they know the shizzy gonna hit the fizzy. Russia and China are also agreeing to expand their security ties more and more. They're doing joint patrols in the oceans. They are doing military exercises. They're sharing military technology. They're going to expand information exchanges on countering extremism and foreign attempts to undermine constitutional order, i.e. color revolutions and the like. So they're going all in. I mean, I don't understand the logic. I mean, maybe the U.S. has more weapons stored up than they're letting on, because you have a lot of people on the Russian side saying, oh well, it's actually NATO who's running out of weapons, and I find that kind of difficult to believe. And even if they were, the US war economy could ratchet itself up to be even more power than the Russian war economy, although I would argue that the culture of the United States is not very compatible with that. I mean, you have this Grand Theft Auto video game leak, this Grand Theft Auto 6 video game leak. You got people who are and the reason why I bring that up is because it's like the video game generation, right? Everybody's on psychopharmaceuticals. They're all divorced. They're all like purple hair. Nobody knows what gender they are. And I don't care what gender you are. I don't care, this and that. But it's just a very schizophrenic society, and no disrespect to schizophrenics when I say that. I just offended everybody in one breath. There goes this whole video. Channel's getting taken down. But you guys know what I mean. Like, they're just not as culturally homogenous. They're not as orthodox. There's a lot of things that need to happen. what they've done within American society is that they've, I don't want to get, I'm not going to go Andrew Tate style in this video. We're not going to do it. No, we're staying the course. We'll save that for another video. We'll burn our bridges on another day. Okay. David DeCamp, who's the senior editor at antiwar.com, has tweeted that if passed, the bill to send all these weapons to Taiwan will make war much more likely. Thank you, anti-war guy. Like we needed to know that. Biden has basically committed to backing Ukraine as long as it takes. They're not going to back down. Interesting thing is happening right now. 4 out of 5 of the European countries bordering Russia are barring entry of Russian tourists as of midnight yesterday, and that they should not travel while their country is at war with Ukraine. I think it was Poland, Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania imposed these new restrictions, while Finland has refrained and decided to keep its borders open. Now, a lot of people are saying about the brain drain thing. A lot of people are saying, oh, the smart people are leaving Russia. Here's my argument against that. My argument against brain drain in general is that a lot of the entrepreneurial people, the social climbers, they're probably going to leave to go where they can get a cheaper Netflix subscription or whatever sort of vain things that vain materialistic pursuits that would be offered there. But the really smart people, okay, I'm talking about like the university top tier professors who all they do is think all day. We're talking like the IQ range north of 150. Those people are more idealist. They're probably more patriotic, I would presume. I mean, you look at Einstein, he wasn't like a rich guy or anything. You know, I mean, he was, what, IQ of 190 or something like that. The people with the highest IQs, like the wildly intelligent people, are not people who are just going to go somewhere for frivolous purposes. They're not people who are just going to be bought, right? Because these are the people who are thinking about the nature of life and the universe and things that you're not going to entice them, you know, into the rat race with a piece of cheese, right? These people are motivated by things that are beyond most people's comprehension. So I don't buy the brain drain bit. I don't think Russia is going to lose the people that it needs, you know, to do this war mobilization, whatever it is. So I don't agree with the brain drain hypothesis. I also think it's somewhat byproduct of our very Eurocentric view of things, our Western-centric view of things, that we have it better, and, you know, I mean, that our Western-centric value system is something that the rest of the world is seeking, when in reality, 7 billion people don't share the same perspective as us. I mean, sure, I like getting Grand Theft Auto 6 leaks and knowing what's coming and knowing how our lives are going to be ruined again in 2 or 3 years when that game is released and it completely takes the world by storm. Because I do think, as a sidebar here, I do think that they're planning something big with that game. I think that this was actually a scripted leak. If you don't know Grand Theft Auto 6, it's one of the biggest grossing games in history. But I think this one is going to be different. I think this leak was done by the company to generate a bit of buzz, because Take-Two Interactive, the company who owns Rockstar Games, their stock has been slipping for a long time. It's down like 50%. And I think they tried to do this to generate more attention. But I think that game is going to be what brings people into the metaverse. It's going to be revolutionary in a bad way. Okay, we already get this, guys, shortages of Adderall right now. There's shortages of Adderall. I think it was in May 2020, there was 3 million people in the US on Adderall. By December 2021, there was 3.5 million people on Adderall. This is the TikTok generation. You really think these people are ready to mobilize for war? They won't even work for a $20 minimum wage in California. So, no. I think that culturally speaking, the US is less ready for a war economy, even though from a resources and on paper perspective, it might look like they're more ready. But I think that China, authoritarian and the Russian semi-authoritarian models could prevail in that. Biden has told Putin, don't use tactical nuclear weapons. I'm not sure how Putin has responded, but I'm presuming that he probably doesn't care what Biden thinks about that. Yeah, so, you know, there's talk of nuclear weapons. Now, if it's true, which I don't think it is, because they, like I said, they still have 7,000 S-300 missiles left. That's what's on paper. That's what we know. They probably have a lot more than that. As far as we know, that they still have a lot of weapons left. But once they start running out of weapons, when they truly start running out of weapons, that's when you got to start worrying about tactical nuclear warheads. And it's not even so much using the tactical nuke on the battlefield itself, because you do require a concentration of Ukrainian forces in order to make it worth it. But look, talking about if it's worth it, these tactical nukes, they're already built. The money's already been put into it. So the money's already wasted. So even if you only hit, you know, a few platoons of guys with one tactical nuke, you know, I mean, obviously they wouldn't do it for that, but you know what I mean. It doesn't have to be this concentration of forces. Never going to use it on a civilian area, but if they can get a concentration of guys and they're running low on weapons and they feel that their country's existence is at risk, they'll use a tactical nuke for sure. The real question is, how will the United States respond? Will they respond with a tactical nuke? I don't think so. I don't think so, because I don't even think many people, including the late Peter Pry and all his genius, had said that he didn't even think that NATO would necessarily come to the aid of some of these smaller countries. That Article 5 was kind of just make-believe, right? Anyways, what else do we got going on here? The Adderall shortage is pretty crazy. You know, I understand that some people require that they have these neurological conditions which require medications in order to help mediate them. But I do think that sometimes we're too quick to put a Band-Aid on things in this society, because, you know, maybe there's something else within our culture that is creating all these crazy, unprecedented issues. Just a hunch. Farmer suicides continue in India due to drought and flooding. This is kind of an age-old thing, it seems. Since like the 70s, they started giving out these bank loans in India, and people can't pay the loans back, so they're taking their own lives. This is becoming more and more common, so it's a grim situation. You have French farmers who are collecting their smallest corn crop in more than 3 decades, and that's saying a lot, because 3 decades, you've had 3 decades of scientific progress. You've had 3 decades of prices coming down and all these other inputs into the agricultural system. So it's saying a lot that it's the smallest corn crop since that time, considering the population has increased by billions of people since that time. So that's very concerning. And that's, of course, the result of the 1 in 500 year drought that Europe is currently experiencing. Now, German nuclear plant is shutting down after a reported leak. Makes me wonder why. I mean, you got France shutting down these nuclear plants. You got Germany shutting down these nuclear plants. If I was a conspiracy theorist, guys, I would suspect, if you're seeing the situation at Zaporizhzhia right now with the war between Russia and Ukraine, then if you are getting yourself prepared for World War III, would you want to have all of these liabilities out there, all of these places that could be used against you? Is shutting down the nuclear power stations actually so that they can prepare for World War III? I'm giving you guys gold in this video, man. Put that on a t-shirt too. I don't know if that's the case. I'm guessing it's probably more to do with, you could say it's to do with the green agenda and all that stuff. I don't really buy that. I don't really buy that our leaders are that swayed by the smart people who have really crappy offices in the inside of buildings in academia with high IQs. I don't think they care that much. I can't see that being the motivation. Klaus Schwab or whoever, Klaus Schwab net worth, as far as I know, is only in the millions, in the single digit millions. So who the hell is this guy? Why are we talking about him? Anyways, I'm not so convinced. So maybe there's an ulterior motive to this nuclear stuff that is more related to, we got to prepare for when the bombs start flying, and we don't want these nuclear power plants going haywire when it actually happens. Something to consider. Bridgewater's Ray Dalio expects stocks to fall 20% if rates rise to 4.5%. Damn, that would bring us a little closer to that average Shiller PE ratio, wouldn't it? Canadian wealth suffers the biggest drop on record in the second quarter of 2022. Household net worth plunged 6.1%. The market has been crashing in free fall, and it's not even in the news this year. It's funny. Dire warning issued for the EU this year. They've indicated that 70% of nitrogen fertilizer production capacities in the EU have already been stopped. Aluminum production has already been reduced by 25% and steel by 5%. You know what this means? This means next year we're going to see even crazier food shortages. The French have been warned of winter blackouts because half of their nuclear power plants are currently offline and being repaired due to corrosion issues or something like that. That, of course, they rely on for 70% of their electricity, and they're going to have to rely on electricity to provide heat. Heat is a very inefficient way of generating heat, so it's going to just lead to higher and higher costs. You have Walmart and Target canceling billions of dollars worth of purchases. Now, this is what I don't understand. If Europe, where are we going here? Oh yeah, we're talking about Walmart and Target. If Walmart and Target anticipated that there was going to be a war with China and that there would be complications in getting shipments, wouldn't they be increasing their inventories? Now, they're saying that they're doing this, of course, in order to, because they're worried about the recession and people not having enough money to buy this stuff. This is why they're canceling all this stuff, because they don't want to be stuck with this inventory. Maybe they're just being short-sighted, though. Because if this situation pops off with Taiwan, every cargo ship that they can get right now, including the stuff within it, is going to cost a lot more after that happens. So it must be that they're thinking that the recessionary fears are going to override the threat of any sort of war. We are going on way too long here, guys. As you all know, Alaska was hit by what they're calling the biggest storm on record, or one of the biggest storms on record. Did they call it one of the strongest storms to ever hit the state, they are saying, so nothing new there. Japan battered with record rainfall, yet another unprecedented climactic event, nothing to see there. Blackouts in Puerto Rico. And lastly, to round it all off, I'm not sure if I talked about this yet, but the Iran nuclear deal is pretty much toast. France's foreign minister is saying that Iran should accept the nuclear deal because it's not going to get any better. The Iranians want guarantees that the U.S. is not going to back out of the deal like they did when Trump took office, and they're probably not going to get that. So that means that they're probably going to continue refining uranium. The sanctions are going to continue in place. We're going to further alienate the triad of China, Russia, and Iran, and everything is pointing towards war. So I hope you're prepping, but I hope at the same time you guys are enjoying life, because this is as good as it's going to get, most likely. I don't think the promises of Cathie Wood are going to come to fruition, in which we see a technological deflationary environment where there's just this endless cornucopia of stuff thanks to robots and automation, all that other stuff we're promised, and universal basic income and a shorter work week. I think that ship has sailed, to be brutally honest. I think we're past many, many tipping points, and so just enjoy the days while you can, while you have them. You know, don't despair about this stuff. Stay informed, but, get out there and get it while the getting is good. This should be motivation for you to improve your life, to be the best person you can possibly be. And I looked at myself in the mirror the other day, and I thought to myself, you know what? I think this bulk needs to end. That's what I call it, the bulk, right? I think this needs to end. I got to start losing weight. So we're going to lose weight. We're going to go down to about 190. And for me, losing weight is easy. I tell myself, okay, we're going to intermittent fast. We're going to cut our calories. We're going to go to bed hungry. We're going to train fasted, and we'll lose the weight in 6 to 8 weeks. No problem. Easiest thing a person could possibly do. And the reason why we're doing that is because we need to be in tip-top condition to endure what's coming. And we would be, quite frankly, full of crap, and you shouldn't listen to us if we're not practicing what we preach, to be brutally honest. So if you're seeing somebody who is, and no disrespect, I don't fat shame or anything like that, but if a person is not taking care of their number one tool, which is their body, you know, if you're shaving decades off of your life due to poor lifestyle choices, and you're preaching about preparedness to people, something's wrong there. Something doesn't add up. First and foremost, the person who is talking to you about these types of things should be taking care of their health primarily. They shouldn't have all these vices which are shortening their lives, because that is the point, is to live longer. To live, of course, a fulfilling life where you leave a legacy with other people and you have a positive impact on things, but you live longer so you can help your progeny when times get hard. My friends, I got to go. Thanks for watching. Canadian Prepper out.